All right, so we'll count 1, 2, and then on 3, clap.
Okay.
All right, 1, 2, and 3.
You said 3, not end.
Yeah, here's the thing. Fuck you.
All right. Well, with that, welcome residents to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners just like you. And today we have a returning guest, comedian, podcaster, writer, secret lover, Kyle Clark.
Hello.
Not secret anymore.
It hasn't been secret for a long time.
I mean, it's been pretty open. It's, You've outlasted like 2 relationships now.
Only 2?
Well, I mean that I can talk about publicly.
Fair enough. Oh, I apologize. I just blew up your spot. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow, what good friends you are.
I know. What an asshole.
Good friend, bad mistress. Believe you me.
This is just like the last time. I'm the third wheel on my own show.
You mean when Kyle just just glanced over at me and didn't want to stop looking?
Welcome back to the Podcock Network.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it makes you feel better, this time I can't look at him, and so I'll probably be somewhat more on game.
You could look at a photo of me on your phone if you really want.
I'm doing that already.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I did call you, so I guess there probably is a little photo at least on the corner.
Wait, are you implying confidently that you think I have a photo of you that comes up when you call?
I think it's either me or one of my dogs.
What kind of confidence is that? I am not tech savvy enough to know how that works.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to put in that aspect of it into the storyline. Yeah, that's true. You probably don't.
Look, the phone rang and I didn't go, and throw it across the room. So already we're off to a good start.
It's good. Well,
the last time you were on, we talked about Grant Morrison. Well, scratch the surface.
And mostly the X-Men, a not DC property.
Yeah, there was a lot of X-Men talk. You know, I'll let that go. I think we've got a foolproof theme for this week. I don't think the X-Men can come up.
See, we've hit a different setup here today because you've tapped into literally my favorite, the reason I think comics are good, instead of that one period in 2000 to 2001 where Marvel Comics was a good company.
Yeah.
I forgot about that period.
So, I mean, it came up in that Morrison episode. We're going to get to it in the show, but we're going to be talking about Vertigo Comics, which I'm very, very excited about. I think it's going to be a fun time. We got lots of questions, and specifically, we got lots of questions about a couple of very particular things. So,
it's Vertigo. I would expect nothing less.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, before we go into that, let's hit up the news.
Let's do it.
So apparently, Aquaman promo images have revealed some new looks, which is the orange and green Aquaman costume.
Yeah.
And we get some new Mira and Black Manta, but this Aquaman costume is what I want to talk about.
Get the actual comic book Aquaman costume, and it looks dope.
Kyle, have you been looking at the trailers for this Aquaman movie coming out?
I have not. I'm on a superhero movie sabbatical, and then even beyond that, the idea, even if the Justice League movie had been the greatest movie ever made, and even if we lived in the Entourage universe where the Aquaman movie outgrosses the first Spider-Man, I still don't know that I could bring myself to get excited about this Aquaman movie, because it seems like between the Justice League movie and this movie that the tagline for Aquaman, the movie, is, "Look who's not gay."
Wow.
Oh, did that one hurt?
That largely seems to be the plot to all the Aquaman things happening.
Aquaman 1. I'm not gay. Second, Aquaman 2. I'm not gay. You're gay.
I'm very comfortable in my sexuality. I've been the one pitching that they should have the slogan "Get Wet" this whole time.
It's true, because we'll be.
I mean, they made a pretty brutal mistake not doing that. I feel like years from now, they're going to be looking at the old ad campaigns going man, we really fucked that up.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be some sort of marketing textbook that was this like, yeah, there's this obscure episode of this podcast where this guy came up with a way better tagline, but they didn't use it for some reason.
I gotta say, I do not want to go to one of those 4D theaters for this movie.
What if it just releases a small amount of water into the bottom of your seat the entire movie to simulate wetness?
I just picture just like the smell of like a fish market.
Like when you sit down on a log flume ride.
Oh my god. I'm excited for the Aquaman movie. And until now we've only seen Aquaman in that kind of like sort of generic shell armor and stuff like that.
Justice League like gladiator leather like
and that sort of thing. But now we have the
Have they released a trailer yet?
Sorry?
Have they released a trailer yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They released it at
Does
Comic-Con.
it feature Aquaman's favorite song, Icky Thump, throughout the trailer again?
It doesn't, unfortunately. It's missing. It feels wrong to not have Icky Thump in there.
I mean, it's they might as well put in parentheses the Aquaman song.
That did end up being one of my favorite parts of that Justice League movie, was just watching him drink and walk down that quay. But yeah, the orange and green like
it's actually just Hotel Yorba. This entire.
God, if Jack White did the score for the Aquaman movie, I would go see it just to see so everyone making this movie was drunk.
No, it's James
and
Wan.
And theoretically a bunch of dads.
Yeah, well, no, of course. A bunch of real straight dads.
I'm technically
there's that scene where Aquaman talks about how the Black Keys are not as good.
It's really critical to the narrative. That's what he and Orm are fighting over.
Actually, if you think about it, Black Manta is actually played by Dan Auerbach, so it makes a lot more sense now.
Kyle, have you ever read any Aquaman? Like, is there a version are you a hook hand Aquaman fan, or is it just all of it is a wash to you?
I much prefer him when he has the weird post hook hand made out of water.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Because it's the least practical version. That's part of is that Mark Waid's run?
Yeah, that's Aquaman Volume 6. Yeah.
Because I love Mark Waid is the kind of company man who will hear the words "you can't bring back his hand" and they just assume that means the same thing as hook hand, and then they get a script where he's now got a blue translucent water hand, and they're like, "God damn it, Mark!" And he's just like, "Heh."
Wasn't a hook.
But so do they give any context for how he's wearing this costume? And I'll look it up. But does he look utterly ridiculous?
No, it looks great.
It looks as great as the orangey green one can look.
Get fucked, Richard. It looks fucking great.
He looks like a merman.
Merman, daddy. No, I think the context is that's probably something more regal for him to wear, by the end of the movie when he's King of Atlantis.
Okay, I'm seeing this now. Yeah, it's very scaly. He looks like a fun fish man.
It's super comic accurate.
Yeah. And I mean, really, the other costume didn't bother me that much to begin with because it's got that kind of 90s, cool, look at me, I'm there's a whole new Spawn influenced hero in town.
Sure, yeah. This ain't your granddaddy's Aquaman.
Yeah.
This is water dude. Get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just such a weird choice for Aquaman.
Really?
Yeah.
Who would you cast?
Well, I mean, what I would do is not make an Aquaman movie. And that might actually get into our larger exploration of DC here, because this time I'll actually talk about DC Comics on your DC Comics podcast.
on the Vertigo episode.
I was about to say we're off on the wrong foot, but at least we're talking DC.
Before we full tilt get into Vertigo, because I'll say this, the Keith Giffen version of the Justice League, the Justice League International and Maxwell Lord and all that stuff is one of my favorite comic book runs of all time. It's probably one of my favorite superhero books. It's so funny and silly and does such a good job of being and it does a good job of being jokey and funny in a comic book in the opposite of that thirsty ass Deadpool way where it's just not shouting catchphrases at you, but instead has well constructed character jokes.
Yeah.
And kind of turns the show into a funny Ivan Reitman movie. And that ruined the rest of Justice League for me. Cause the version of
I was going to say, have you heard that Maxwell Lord is going to be in Wonder Woman 1984?
Yeah, and I mean that's all well and good, but like I don't know if I'm like pulling from that entire run of stuff. I don't know. It's not, sort of like when they were like in one of the X-Men movies, like, and somebody's playing Henry Peter Geiger. I'm like, cool. That doesn't really cool. You named a man in a suit after a man from a comic book. Like, I bet it was a real stretch for you.
Right. Yeah.
Well, with that, let's go to the next piece of news.
Let's do it.
From now they're all fired up, let's go to some somber news. Batman artist Norm was it Breyfogle? Breyfogle. He died.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
sad.
he's a very like iconic Batman artist from like the 80s and 90s.
What are some of his sort of more prolific stuff?
I mean, there's like a whole run of Batman and like Detective Comics and stuff like that has his style. It's very like kind of block colors, lots of shadow, and very like exaggerated kind of forms. It's lots of like pointy lines and things like that. There's a sort of a whole era of Batman kind of defined by his style. But yeah, he just passed away.
Kyle, do you know any of this Breyfogle work?
I'm not super familiar. I know of the name as like one of the contributors for like 90s DC and stuff like that. And it's always like sad when you lose talent like that. And the 90s that early 90s DC aesthetic's actually kind of cool because it's right before you wander into the hellscape of like their mid 90s, post Death of Superman aesthetic. So it's definitely sad to lose somebody from that kind of, right before DC lost its mind and decided shoulder pads forever.
Yeah, for me, I find that like I like the sort of his Robin is sort of almost like a callback to sort of like the classic Robin.
Yeah.
Before everybody was just like Bendis forever, nothing else matters. Like I like this sort of version of him. But it's a sort of a wink back to the past while still sort of being modern. But
yeah. So it's very, very, very sad news.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next on the docket, the Arrowverse crossover officially named Elseworlds, which concerns me quite a lot.
Not only that, but apparently the Monitor is going to show up.
Kyle, have you watched any of the sort of CW like superhero shows? Have you watched any of them?
I've seen some. I personally think that like they are killing it in a way that they are not getting enough credit for, because like it's just funny that like we lose our minds over all these other things, especially with like the DC movie news where when it's just like, you guys understand that on TV they're doing like this incredible, detailed, very earnest, very well done thing.
It's true.
And everyone's like, yeah, but it doesn't have Batman in it, so fuck you.
Hey, they're trying real hard to get to Batman and Gotham.
All those shows are so good, and I feel like there's no better example of how good they are than like them kind of existing while Gotham is also on the air and like sucks. Like,
what do you mean? That's high quality caliber of TV show. I don't know what you mean.
Well, it feels like such an executive who does not understand comic books thing. We're like, you know what people love about Batman comics is everything except Batman. All that shit everybody wades through all the time just because they like a man dressed as a bat so much? Let's just give him that part, but none of the best part of comics.
You get Alfred. He's even getting his own show.
Oh, yeah, it's great because it's like, how there's all those Alfred spin-off books that we're always excited about. And then, but again, fuck off. Meanwhile, like on the CW, 5 shows. There are 5 shows they are running simultaneously in continuity, and all of them are pretty good.
It's true.
Well, and I mean, like the crossovers in particular have been like getting better
Amazing.
and better. The one last year, the Crisis on Earth X, where the Nazis invade from Earth X, it was amazing. It was basically like a 4-part movie. They didn't even treat it like episodes of the shows, pretty much.
Yeah.
So this one,
and go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say this one, it's only 3 parts because Legends of Tomorrow actually isn't involved in this one. But it's called Elseworlds. It involves Batwoman. It takes place in Gotham City. We know it has something to do with Arkham Asylum. And we know that the Monitor is being cast, like the Monitor's showing up. So there's the theory that they're going to use this to merge Earths and bring Supergirl fully into Arrow's Earth.
Have they not done that?
No, she's technically like Earth 38 in the TV multiverse.
Yeah.
So the thought is that there might be some sort of mini crisis kind of event happening.
Is there any
the fact that there's a TV show where the Anti-Monitor is like being teased for the future is insane, and the fact that like people aren't just like running around Def Jam style celebrating these shows.
It's true. I don't. Have you watched Black Lightning yet?
I have not. Like, I want to. Like, I'm behind on all of the things, but like, it looks amazing though. Like every time they throw out another one of those, I'm just like each one has its own sort of like style it sits in. They each, have kind of an aesthetic and a cast that kind of goes with it, and yet they all fit in. Like, they literally successfully created a comic book continuity on television.
Do you know what's funny is we just, like, our previous episode to this, we talked about like DC TV, and both of us kind of shit on a bunch of these shows. I mean, like, I in general love the stuff, obviously, because I just like seeing it.
I think we're just too far into it.
But it's kind of nice. Well, we're too far into it. It's kind of nice to have Kyle on because he's someone who actually like works in TV and things
it's
like
true.
that. Can actually be like, no, like there's things to appreciate in these shows. Because we were shitting on Arrow. I said that Black Lightning is maybe like 5 episodes too long. But like
That's true of literally every TV show, though, too.
well, that's fair.
Can I ask you guys a related question?
Sure.
Maybe this is on the news docket, maybe it's not. Have you guys been talking about the DC, like, crazy app with, like, the new shows coming out?
See, we can't talk about it because
we would talk about it if they offered it in fucking Canada.
yeah, it's not available in Canada, but we've been talking about the shows, and trust me, when they come out, we'll find a way.
Oh, yeah.
We'll find a way to get
I'm
them.
going to watch Titans.
I mean,
I'm going to watch
I'm a little
Swamp Thing.
sad. They all look great. The Titan show looks really good. The one that's killing me is is Doom Patrol.
Right?
Because, like, it looks really, really good, but it's also breaking my heart because that's been my one, like, man, I never want to make, like, a corporate superhero movie unless Doom Patrol is made available, in which case I'm very interested.
Right.
Did you see the Robot Man images yet?
I have not yet.
It's like the most. He stepped out of the comic book. It's pretty wild.
I think it's gonna be amazing, but there is this like bittersweet element to it, just because like I had such a design for it, where I wanted to do it like an old Barry Sonnenfeld movie, like Men in Black and the Addams Family and stuff like that. I thought would have been such a cool way, and they're pulling definitely a little more from the Young Animal, template, which I ain't mad at, because we'll definitely get into where I feel, land on Young Animal, in the modern DC landscape as we get into Vertigo and stuff like that. But it's definitely been interesting looking at it. I would love to see all of those also cross over. And also the fact that they kept John Constantine alive.
Doom Patrol is actually spinning out of Titans. I think episode 9 of Titans is called Doom Patrol.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so at least those two will be connected. I'm not sure if Swamp Thing or Stargirl, if those are all going to be part of the same sort of universe or not, but definitely.
Can you imagine if they were, though? How cool that would be?
Yeah, it'd be fucking rad.
Yeah.
They can do it. They have no reason not to. People are going to be subscribing to it to watch these anyways. Why not connect them?
Might as well, yeah.
Fucking, oh my God, I'm so stoked. Well, I mean, with that, we may as well go to the next piece of news, which is the Titans debut new 30-second character spots.
Actually, these are way better than the trailer for Titan.
It's true. They're it gives you a way better idea of what these characters
you
are
get
actually
to see
going to be
some
doing.
Beast Boy transformations, which is awesome. Starfire, you get to see like a bit more for power.
Gives me way more confidence in these characters' designs, to be honest.
These 30-second spots have shown that the show is better than the trailer.
It's funny because each character is just like, fuck Batman, fuck this person. And the other character is like, fuck this person. They've each got their like, fuck this character line. It's really great.
That's true. Yeah.
It looks so cool. Like, what a crazy world we live in, where it's like again, the fact that like no one is losing their minds, that there is a goddamn Teen Titans live action, like very seriously taken show happening.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the stuff we take for granted now, right? And like, because it's such like a plethora of comic book stuff out there for general consumption. It's good.
And I feel like
it's good that you're on to remind us to be like a little bit more open-eyed about it.
It's so weird because like I feel like that this stuff is like the secret good stuff that will like I feel like this is the kind of stuff that like 15 years from now there's going to be all these think pieces about like, it's weird. We were losing our minds about a bunch of piece of shit Marvel and DC movies, and then like 5 to 10 TV shows were running at the same time that we all just forgot about because we were busy.
Yeah, totally. It's a very good point.
It's true, and I've been watching.
It's a point, Richard. Actually, we should cut this and edit it back into the episode where we talked about the TV, so it looked like we thought of it.
I know, exactly. I've been watching the second season of Iron Fist, and I actually enjoy it now. The first season is still hot trash, but this second season has actually been pretty good so far. I'm 4 or 5 episodes in.
I just feel like you're a race trader, Richard, and DC all the way forever.
Thank you, Kyle.
You son of a bitch.
Thank you.
You come onto my podcast. You start this shit.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the Dr. Producer Richard podcast?
It can be with just a few types of the keyboard, you son of a bitch.
I need to get into Libsyn and change the password first.
Oh man, I feel like I'm causing chaos, not unlike how Dr. Destiny did in that 24-hour diner in that issue of Sandman, one of the seminal early Vertigo books.
Hey, you slow it down. We're not there yet.
Oh, do we have more news?
Yeah, we got one piece of news left, so shut your mouth.
Jesus.
You,
So aggressive.
he knows I love him. Ewan McGregor and Charlton Copley in the running to play Black Masks in Birds of Prey.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fucking Ewan McGregor.
Birds of Prey actually looks pretty cool. Like, I'm kind of stoked on that.
Yeah, I'm into both of those. And like the casting so far, they cast Black Canary, they cast Huntress. Those look awesome. I'm really excited for that. They still have to cast like Renee Montoya and Cassandra Cain.
Renee Montoya, you killed my father for pain.
I mean, it wouldn't be our podcast if you didn't say that.
Are you proud of that, Richard?
Yeah, every time. This is like the 20th time.
I think it happened the last time you were
was the
on.
first time you did it, and everyone was like, that's super funny. Keep doing it.
Yeah, that's what everybody keeps saying. Keep doing it.
All of our reviews say, don't change anything. Everything's perfect.
You know what? You say, you make a joke about it, but every time I say, I want to change this stupid part of the podcast, they always go, no, keep calling in.
Oh, rest in peace.
Oh, yeah, forever. No, I actually love Charlton Copley as well, but like...
Charlton Copley feels like the more obvious one because he can play the crazy or he can play like dark. I'd be up for seeing Ewan McGregor be a bad guy.
Yeah, someone needs to throw Ewan McGregor a bone. I mean, when was the last time he was in a good movie?
He was in Christopher Robin.
Oh, God, that fucking...
Listen, I'm a parent.
I stand by the statement.
I'm a parent. I have nostalgia. It's a beautiful film. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
Go cry me a river. So, yes. Have you heard about the Birds of Prey at all, Kyle?
I have. I've been following that one. Fun fact, I was actually a big fan of the Birds of Prey TV show from the early 2000s.
Well, I got
Watched every episode.
I got to meet Rachel Scarston. She came up for Comic-Con that we had up here a couple of summers ago. So it was kind of cool to hang out with
the
her.
relic hunter of superhero TV shows.
I had a weird moment at some point when I realized that somewhere along the line I became a big Dina Meyer fan.
Okay.
Really?
So, somewhere between Birds of Prey and Starship Troopers and the Saw movies, I was like, man, Dina Meyer and I keep crossing paths a lot here.
Oh, and then Dragonheart, too. Great job.
Yeah, right? The list just keeps going. The hits keep coming.
Saw, 2004.
You just have the IMDb on?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about that Saw 2004 movie, specifically directed by James Wan. Feature song,
I don't
Hello
think
Zep.
she's in the
Yeah, hey,
first
what was
Saw,
the box
though. I don't
office
think she
for that
comes
one?
until Saw 2.
Box office was 100.
She's not until Saw 2?
Yeah, and then, I don't think she comes in until, she's not until Saw 2, because she's part of the team that's trying to find
Wait a
people
minute.
in the building.
Saw 1, the budget was 1.2 million, and they only made 103 million? I thought that movie would have done better.
Yeah, I would have too, actually.
Wait, no, it was made for $1.3 million, and it made 100 and something million.
I just thought it would have done better than that.
Oh, sorry.
That's pretty good. They
I
made
completely
$90
misheard
million.
The way I heard it, I heard you say they made it for $111 million and it made 113.
You know what? I
was like,
I was trying to back up and like pretend like I knew that the whole time, but I totally read it that way. Yeah. So thanks for calling me out on that.
Well, no, I was with you. So, so beyond Ewan McGregor and Charlton Copley, do either of you guys have like someone you would consider like a dark horse, but like reasonable candidate to play Roman Sionis, Black Mask in Birds of Prey?
I actually think Shalto would probably have gotten my vote. I think
really?
He's a pretty solid choice for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a Tim Roth, but I feel like Tim Roth's too good for that role.
Yeah, if Tim Roth was a bit, well, no, maybe he doesn't have to be younger. Maybe it works anyway. Yeah.
Now I just want that. God.
Sorry. Your answer is Kyle had a cool answer, and now I'm afraid that my answer's not as cool.
That's generally my answer,
Yeah,
but
we call that evening.
Just embarrassed in front of his friends.
Oh, that's called this podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's why I don't share on my personal Facebook that much.
All right. Well, let's go to this week's theme,
right.
which we've already obviously released, but we're talking Vertigo.
We are. Vertigo Comics specifically. No,
Yeah, not just the idea that I don't feel so good.
and not just Jimmy Stewart.
Oh no!
U2 song for the Tomb Raider soundtrack.
Oh, Jesus Christ! See, I look up this stuff on IMDb. That's just in his brain.
No. Vertigo wasn't on it. It was Elevation.
Oh shit, you're right. Yes, I've been
Fucking
had.
dorks.
It was
Oh my
Elevation. It's on
They
the
are
same,
they are off of the same album, right? Aren't they both off
They're
of
on
How
the
to
same album, but
Dismantle a Bomb?
Elevation is the song from Tomb Raider.
God. You fucking
Yeah.
dorks. Oh my god.
Sorry, they were both in iPod ads.
So, Kyle, why don't we talk about
How
your
else are we
history
supposed to know
with
about songs about
Vertigo?
moles digging a hole, staring at your soul?
Jesus Christ.
Incredible lyrics.
I give up.
Best band ever.
Yeah?
Fuck you. You heard it here.
Fuck.
We did touch on this the last time you were on, but Kyle, yeah, why don't you maybe you can tell us, like, what is it about Vertigo Comics that, why is that like your happy place?
For the fans at home, you can start the clock now.
You said you've come and gone from Marvel and sort of maybe some more mainstream comics. What is it about Vertigo that works for you?
So to begin with, all of this is with the bias of Vertigo Comics is maybe like classic era Vertigo is one of my like favorite things on earth. Like it's like one of those things where it's literally, there's not even like I don't know. I think when I started getting into comics, I jumped onto the normal stuff, and it was kind of, in my mind, like a good time to start because it was that early 2000s where people were making some interesting choices and doing stuff. And I remember I was sitting in high school my freshman year, sitting next to the dude at the back of my math class, and he was the kid in the Nine Inch Nails shirt, good old Samson. And we were talking about Nine Inch Nails and cool bands and things like that, and how we both enjoy black t-shirts, and we both liked comics. And at this point, I'm like way into comics, and I know almost no one who's into comics. Like literally one of my best friends in the world, the guy Brandon Flick, we are friends because he read comics, and so I made him hang out with me so we could talk about comics. And Samson was like, oh man, did you ever get into Sandman? I'm like, oh, I've heard of that. It looked really good. And he's like, well, I've got it. I'll lend him to you. So he lent me all 10 trades one at a time of the Sandman book, because then he had someone to talk about it with, because he had read it a million times and had never really talked about it with anybody. And I went from like, oh, comics are pretty cool, superheroes are neat, to like, oh, this is like a book that is breaking my brain one issue at a time. It's right up there with like, the first time you find punk rock, or the first time you find any of the things that like make you a person. And like Sandman was definitely one of my like defining moments where it went from like, oh, comic books are this one thing, to all of a sudden like, oh, comic books can literally be anything. And that has kind of become what I love about comics, and why I get so mad about comics is when people just do comics is like, oh, and I got this idea, and it's what if superheroes were real? I'm like, die in a fire.
Kyle, you get mad about comics? I've never heard you ever rant about it.
But I get mad about comics, and I feel like the opposite way that comic book nerds get mad about comics, because I feel like most of the comic book nerds are these like shitty conservative guys who want comics to get back to old standards. And I just want to like Fight Club burn down all of comics and just have it be whatever weird things weirdos think of.
Yeah, you're a comic book anarchist.
Yeah, I mean, that's the lamest thing I've ever said. Yeah, emphatically. But I just feel like, because
you're on my show. I can call you whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. I mean, like, Sandman led to Watchmen and Preacher, but then all that stuff led me to Love and Rockets and Stray Bullets and all these other, like, Olive Drawn and Quarterly and all of Fantagraphics. And then that leading me to, like, R. Crumb and Harvey Pekar, into Mary Fleener and then ultimately, like, Charles Burns and stuff like that. All these different things that just keep pushing, and then that tilted me enough to be able to get into, like manga and stuff. But, by looking for, like, the weird, interesting things there and appreciating it from those points of view. And I mean, ultimately, it all comes down to, like, one day, like, I owe a fruit basket to Karen Berger. Because, her work at DC and the work she did putting Vertigo together and the work that's all the kind of proto-Vertigo books, I just look at and go, like, it's crazy that I can literally trace, like, a pretty wide ass, like, level of my, like, aesthetic in life to, like, one person. And it's, like, her sense of taste and her amazing ability to just, like, seemingly dupe DC into, like, publishing all these insane books that are so much better than what comics were at that time, and finding the aesthetic. Have you guys watched the 2000 AD documentary that's on Amazon Prime? Like, if you want to watch me, like, it affects me in such a way that it literally makes my, like, pulse go faster, and I, like, get super hyped off of it, just because, again, it's another book and world of comics that were, like, pushing comics past just, like, look, Superman's got to think about what it's like to be Superman. I'm like, cool, who gives a shit? We've been telling this story for 40 years. Are you aware that there's, like, books where people can just, like, do literally anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, Vertigo's so much. It's so much more literary, at least that was the sort of the genesis of it, right?
But I don't know. Is it literary, or is it that they're just actually well written?
Well, is that? I guess maybe I'm just using that word to mean that. Yeah.
Like, it's and really it's funny too, because I feel like Vertigo is perpetually kind of ahead of the curve on stuff, style wise, writer wise, art wise. There's so many things that, like, they in their heyday of their run, up till kind of that initial death a few years ago, like, they were still always, jumping ahead, to right before it ended. Like, they've got Sweet Tooth and Jeff Lemire before he makes a hit over to, like, mainstream books. And, people who knew Essex County and stuff like that were like, oh, this guy's a goddamn genius. But then you throw him, into Sweet Tooth and you put this book out, all of a sudden everybody's like, who the fuck is this guy? Where did this weird Canadian come from? And then they're like, let's give him Batman and all these other crazy things. And that's because of Vertigo has the forethought to, like, they are the cool thing that finds these things and then, like, normalizes them as a Vertigo book because they've got enough cachet that they can put out whatever they want, or could. Like, I do think that era is kind of over, but I'll get to that towards the end of this because I've got thoughts. But, that they look how many careers that Vertigo kickstarted. It turns out George Perez can't work on every single book, for a long time, I feel like, comics, from the late 70s through the mid 80s, with exception Frank Miller and I guess Alan Moore, who are both, in my mind, kind of just like the proto Vertigo forefathers. Cause I feel like Vertigo is kind of cool because it goes in generations, but really, like, that, after those two guys, like, every cool writer and artist, who comes into, especially the DC landscape, starts at Vertigo. You get your straightforward guys who are all well and good, but at the same time, like, those guys, and I have a lot of friends who like, straightforward comics and who like those kind of traditional books. And it's like having a friend who's like a Republican, but, like, reasonable, or, like, you don't agree with them, but you have to, like, respect that, like, they just have their opinions and you're not going to change them. And I look at that when I look at a person who tells me that I really got to check out, like, Fantastic Four, or that, like, Superman's really good right now. I'm just like, look, man, like, you're my friend and I love you, but also, like, we're just never going to see eye to eye on this, but we can still be friends.
Well, I mean, is American Vampire? That's a Vertigo one too, right? That's Scott Snyder's sort of entry into things, and look at him now, right? He's sort of there.
Snyder's kind of tricky though, because Snyder is one of those people who I wish I didn't non-ironically burn lean tissue thinking about the career of in the context of comic book history, because, like, American Vampire, I think, is already after he's done that Detective Comics run.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's American Vampire hit it first.
Is it after Black Mirror?
That's what I'm curious. Like, but if it isn't, then, man, they sure handed him a blank check real fast. And my God, I like American Vampire. I'm a big Stephen King fan. I think that Scott Snyder has a pretty solid batting average. Like, that book's okay. It's very much like it's a Vertigo-ass Vertigo book, but it's, it's not going to blow anybody's minds, but it's great. But, like, that Black Mirror arc of Detective Comics is just, mwah, oh. I think that's why, like, the second half of, like, City of Owls, because I'd read Court of Owls and I was like, this is really cool. And then I went and made the mistake of reading Black Mirror, and then the rest of Snyder's, like, actual Batman run, I'm like, well, it's never quite like the sequence where he, like, Bruce Wayne goes into like the auction where everybody's in tuxedos wearing gas masks and they're all bidding underground on the the crowbar that killed Jason Todd. I'm like, this is the greatest thing this is the new best Batman story.
Yeah.
Why is everyone not doing backflips over this goddamn book?
Well, and Snyder now is basically, he's like kind of taken up the Morrison mantle, right? Like Dark Knight's Metal was such like a mind fuck of like, it's about story and the multiverse crumbles and all this kind of stuff. And now he's taken on Justice League, and it feels like it has some of the spirit of Morrison's like JLA run and things like that. Like he's kind of bent sort of that way now, which is what I like about him, obviously. But he's kind of had an interesting sort of go around.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately with Vertigo too, like it's literally every great, truly like for the ages comic book writer in comics has a Vertigo book. And to me, like, that's such a, like when you just run the numbers and like look at the books they've had, you know, good or bad, like the number of like you could burn through most of comics history without having to read it. But if you did like a list of like 100 essential comics, like minimum a quarter of them are going to be Vertigo books.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny too, because, you know, when you do so many series, like, it's like, oh, you got to do this arc or this thing, like, and whereas Vertigo, it's literally like, oh, you've got to do this entire series, like, is going to break your brain. You know, you don't read good, Proud Americans in Preacher and then not read Preacher anymore. You read all of Preacher. You read all of Sandman. You read all of Transmo. Like, you know, all of these books are, you know, these weird, epic masterpieces that these geniuses are working on, and there's just a place where you can just go get them all under one roof, and that's insane.
Yeah. And actually, you had made a comment, I think maybe to Richard, that he had told me about.
Oh, I've been sending him a lot of hostile DC texts as like getting ready for this episode.
The specific one that got to me, because I really love this series, is you said, like, how the fuck is Southern Bastards not a Vertigo book?
Well, and that's been the weird thing, is that it's kind of it's not tragic, because it still had a like 25-year run where it's like almost all home runs. You know, there's even the worst old Vertigo books are still not bad. You know, and there's even ones I'll go to bat for. Like, I fucking love Young Liars, and like no one loves Young Liars.
Right.
But you know, at the same time, like it does feel like, you know, it's such a mixed bag. I love that, like, comic books have become this mainstreamed thing, but I do feel like the problem, it's sort of like with, you know, being a big punk rock fan and then pop punk becomes a thing. Like, it's great that people are finding this thing you love and that it's getting out there and all these, like, old people that you love are getting their payday finally. At the same time, there is a bummer, because you do watch everybody get hyper conservative and stop swinging for the fences. And I think that, like, right around New 52, you really see the writing on the wall, and they stop really kind of, to me, going after those, you know, kinds of writers. And, you know, Jason Aaron had Scalped, and Scalped is brilliant. And it seems so crazy to me that, like, you know, he has a book like Southern Bastards and it's not a Vertigo book, because it should be. And there's a lot of them.
That book's incredible. I think that's my favorite comic book right now, but...
Yeah, and there's a lot of books. There's a couple other books. I'm trying, like, Sex Criminals is the other one. That, like, it's crazy to me that Sex Criminals is not a Vertigo book. Like, I think that Image did a really smart job of, like, being this weird directionless company that just stumbles upon success from time to time. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, what if we just became the new Vertigo? And that's what they've done, and they've done a fucking phenomenal job of it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, totally.
All right, I'm bringing up Vertigo Comics on here, because I want to make sure I hit some of the big key items here as far as books go, because, like, when you just look,
I think we have a couple of the big ones coming in the questions. I'm sure we're going to hit a bunch.
Okay,
of them. So why don't we get into it?
Yeah, let's just do this. Yeah. And you know, and there's definitely, like, I will say this, that, like, you know, going from the beginning here, give me one quick second, because I just want to layer this as, like, a thesis statement, and then I'll get another step. Because I feel like the fact that I've talked this long and I haven't brought it up is that, to me, do you guys have things that when you, like, sit and you think the world is a garbage place and humans are awful and we should probably all not exist anymore? Like, there are certain things in this world that, like, make you go, like, okay, well, we made that, so we can't all be awful.
Right. Sure.
And one of mine is Hellblazer. Like from the start, Jamie Delano starting it, going all the way through. I'm like, look, humanity can't be all bad. John Constantine Hellblazer exists. And I'll be honest with you, when that New 52 went and they shifted the Justice League Dark and they changed over from Hellblazer to just Constantine and made it an in continuity DC book and made it not for mature audience, I was like, oh, maybe we do deserve to no longer exist. Like, I really had a real crisis of faith moment, but it was sort of the moment where I had to like go like, okay, Vertigo is dead. It truly is gone because they've taken one of the great pure things because John Constantine is one of my favorite fictional characters, but also like he is one of the things that DC has that Marvel by design can never do. Like, Marvel at the end of the day is still, like, shilly and needy enough that, like, you don't create John Constantine in a focus group. Like, John Constantine is a character who, like, he's like Sherlock Holmes, like, or fucking Batman. Like, you create him and he's this perfect template for every writer to explore in a way that no other company can do. But I think that, like, the second you try to, like, think that you understand why Hellblazer, because Hellblazer is on paper should be the shittiest book. It's this lame edgelord book about a chain-smoking magician man, and he used to be in a band. It's all things that I would make fun of, and instead it's one of my favorite things of all time, and it's because it's so handled so well.
I do feel like Rebirth the whole thing with Rebirth was trying to sort of like course correct the New 52, and they actually renamed the book to, they called it The Hellblazer. You can make of that what you will, but I think they did kind of bring it back. Now, it's still not 100% like mature, like audiences the way that the Vertigo title was, but I do think that they arced it away from the superheroics again.
Yeah, which, and I think I've talked about it before, that, like, ultimately, like, I like comics, I don't love superheroes. And so, like, when you can separate those two concepts is when you really get good books. And I think, like, one of the things with...
You're on the wrong
Hellblazer
podcast.
That makes it... This is why I show up. I've got to bring sanity to an insane world.
Yeah. Twice in 77 episodes.
But one of the things with all of that is that, like, the one thing I can take is, like, if you guys ever get a chance, like, the Hellblazer stuff Andy Diggle was doing at the end is such a glorious victory lap. And you could almost feel like he knew that, like, it's gonna not be this anymore at some point. And so, like, it's, like, just, if you close the door where it goes from Jamie Delano to Andy Diggle and that whole period of people within there, that is one of those runs that you'll look back on one day and just be like, holy shit, Hellblazer was a great fucking book. And literally, like, every great comic book writer in the history of comics, like, wrote a really good story for that.
Nice. All right, let's go to the question. What?
Oh, no, let's do this. Let's do it.
Got any more comments to make, Kyle?
Always, yeah. No, I mean, I'm just getting started. But, like, so let's start, and then I'll cover whatever I think we didn't do justice at the end.
Deal.
Except everybody go buy Day Tripper right now.
All right, let's see how far we can get. Let's see how far we can get then. Well, we're heading over to Twitter.
Twitter.
You okay?
You sounded just like him.
Our first question comes from Raspberries Reviews.
You love that so
I do
much.
really love that. That was Simon King's gift to us.
You know what was fun is that none of us gave you anything.
I know.
And I'm really proud of all the rest of us for creating a united front on that.
It's okay. See, but that laugh he just made, now I can cut all the middle part out and just put that part after.
No, damn it.
I mean, I've never done that. I never edit the podcast to make my jokes work.
Oh, it's upsetting because I think maybe you have.
Raspberries Reviews asks, I don't know much about Vertigo Comics, so can you give me a sales pitch as to why I should consider checking some out? What would you recommend? Kyle?
We've given a little bit of the sales pitch, but definitely, like, why don't we maybe hone that into some, like, specific recommendations? We've already talked about Hellblazer, but Kyle,
yeah, I mean, to me, Hellblazer is maybe the number one that, like, it's a great book, and there's something in there for everybody. If you don't want to hear, like, a super British guy ranting about Margaret Thatcher, maybe move past the Delano stuff and move, but, like, Morrison stuff is super fucked up. Garth Ennis has my single favorite issue of Hellblazer. If you read no other Hellblazer book, just read the one where it's John Constantine's 40th birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And all these
yeah.
characters from DC show up at his house, and then Swamp Thing shows up and they grow and like helps them grow a weed plant, and they just all get super high and drunk and party.
Yeah.
I've never read this. This is amazing.
Oh, it's maybe my single favorite comic issue ever, is just because Swamp Thing helps them grow weed. Like I'm a easy to amuse man.
That's awesome.
But also you've got The Sandman, which is again one of those seminal books. Like it's Neil Gaiman's masterpiece. American Gods is up there. Coraline is up there. But like The Sandman, it's just so good. And it's beautiful. Like, I'm also a real sucker for that old school Vertigo art that I know a lot of people don't love because it doesn't have the like super glossy aesthetic of modern comics and looks a little more, it's got a little bit of that 4-color coloring that I'm a real sucker for when it's done well. And it's a little sloppy, but to me that was always part of the fun, is that it's like, you're an adult, like, here's some cool abstract art to look at, fill in some of the pieces. You're having to engage with the book. It's not the Ultimates, which again is a perfectly fine book, but like Brian Hitch is not giving your imagination a lot of room to imagine things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Brian Hitch's art skews very heavily to like what I would imagine like a house style comic book superhero art would look like.
Yeah. Other books I'd say, Preacher is again one of those books, like, especially if you are listening to this show and you are and you are between the ages of 13 and 17, like, lie, cheat, steal, buy, do whatever you need to do, read all of Preacher before you turn 18. Like, to me, there is maybe no book for any teenage boy of any race, gender, creed, religion, lifestyle. Like, read that goddamn book. And I guess maybe I have a different view of it than you guys might have, just because, like, it is a book about America. If you want to understand why America is a fucked up, crazy place, Preacher is that book.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the sad part is that I think like Canada's equally fucked up, but we just keep the lid on it. But
yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, maybe Preacher is a good read up here too for that. Do you know what I've just been getting into recently that I don't think is going to come up otherwise unless I mention it right now, is Matt Wagner's Madame Xanadu.
That's still on my list to do. I've heard it's great. It's one I've always wanted to do.
It's really good. It's like her through the ages, and yeah, I mean, there's a couple of great issues where it's like her trying to stop Jack the Ripper and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really terrific book. It really like paints like the struggle of sort of immortality kind of interestingly.
I really like the part where they all roller skate around in a circle and then they go into space.
I was waiting for the fucking Xanadu joke. I was waiting for it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that one. I found like an assorted 6 issues of it at like the used bookstore in town. I don't think they knew what they were sitting on because I got it for like $2.
Oh fuck.
So yeah, I've been kind of super into that now, and yeah, I figured that's not going to come up otherwise in conversation, so I wanted to throw it out there.
God, and it's tough because there's so many. So like I'll throw a few like faster ones out, and we'll come back along stuff because I bet that's not the last time that Preacher gets brought up. I will say, as a great one-off book, and I mentioned it a minute ago, Day Tripper from Gabriel Ba he's the guy who does the art for what's it called, the Umbrella Academy,
right? Yeah,
and it's Gabriel Moon and Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba, and it is a one-off book. It's magic realism. It's done in this really like amazing like kind of style, in the same way as like 100 Years of Solitude or Love in the Time of Cholera kind of feel. And it is such a great book. I openly wept several times while reading it on a plane. It is a phenomenal book, and an easy one that you can just like pick up and read, and it's done. One that I think a lot of people would like. It's never been one of my books, but is the Book of Magic. Literally it's like, what if Harry Potter was cool?
Fuck you.
Like, it's an interesting concept.
Oh yeah, Richard's the guy with the Deathly Hallows tattoo.
Yeah, fuck you.
A couple other ones. I mean, The Invisibles, which we brought up somewhat on the other. Like, this is how much I love Grant Morrison and The Invisibles. I'm having a friend make me blank white badges so I can wear one for my next album taping, so that I can have an Invisibles badge on when I record for chaos magic reasons.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, people can't call me a nerd hater. We're just, living in different worlds. I know a lot of people who love Lucifer. Again, haven't read a ton, but I like Mike Carey as a writer, and I really like the Season of the Mist arc from Sandman, so it's one of the ones that's perpetually on my list. iZombie's a lot of fun. I'm a big Mike Allred fan, and I think the art in that's really cool, and my parents really like the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know, I actually haven't been watching the show. Have you?
My folks love it. So
didn't it just get canceled?
Did it get canceled?
Yeah,
I think so.
Oh.
I mean, the couple others that I feel like the other couple that have to come up is, of course, goddamn, Why the Last Man is a good essential one. Haven't finished it, going to. It's on the list. Started it several times. That's always the problem sometimes with Vertigo books is you get real ambitious. And then you remember that it goes on forever. Like one of the other examples I was going to do, Fables. Fables is a book I reluctantly started because I was like, this sounds dumb. And then all of a sudden I had read 22 volumes of it. And I was like, how do I keep reading this? And how is this so long?
I know it's not Vertigo, but that's how I feel about Saga.
Yeah, and it's very much a similar feel. Like, I feel like Saga is another great example of a book that should have been a Vertigo book.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
And then the other one, actually one of the ones that I'm reading right now, Transmet's up there. I feel like Transmetropolitan's one that's got to get brought up because, it's another fairly essential one. But one of the other ones that I've just started, is Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing, which has now been kind of brought into like, and speaking of like, best single books I've ever written, his first issue of his run of the Saga of Swamp Thing is again right up there with like legitimately like one of the greatest things I've ever read. The way he cause I love Alan Moore, and I think that like young Alan Moore is a very interesting thing to read, but cause like I found bootlegs of Miracle Man to read and like found that stuff really interesting, but that prose is purple as fuck, boys. Like it is a guy who is really learning to be a good writer, but is not yet quite there. And V for Vendetta, I would say, is the same way, where I think it's like, oh man, this guy's like grown up a little bit and he's really learning to push the form, but it's an inconsistent book, but that is a phenomenal book. His worst stuff is still better than most comics. And really like, you just keep watching him get better and better and better. And like the Saga of Swamp Thing is where he becomes Alan fucking Moore, where he just becomes that guy. And it is just, the art is glorious. It's terrifying. It's like sad, but it's also like you feel this weird energy reading it that I feel like not a lot of books can give you, where it just feels important as you're reading it.
Yeah. And it's very alive. It's seminal, right? That's the run that sort of completely changed, but didn't change Swamp Thing, right? Like the anatomy lesson, the realization that he's not a man that was transformed into plants. He's a bunch of plants that think they used to be a man.
Yeah, and that's literally the first issue of his run. He changes the entire continuity of what the book is in like 24 pages. And like, I remember I read it and then I read it again and then I just like looked at it for a while, like that first issue, because it's just like, how can someone so efficiently gravity shift everything about a book that quickly and that efficiently in a way where like it all hangs together.
Totally. In a way where like the TV show is going to be based on that as well. So I mean, I'm fucking stoked to see
it's become such a cornerstone of the character, right? It's pretty
and really like I just finished Love and Death, the arc that kind of finally like caps off all that stuff that it involves literally like Swamp Thing going to hell. And like Vertigo Hell, like the one that's in the continuity of like Sandman and Hellblazer and Swamp Thing and stuff like that, is maybe my favorite depiction of hell.
Yeah.
Cause it's just this like bleak but beautiful, ironic, terrifying nightmare place that like feels like it wants to rip your skin off like Hellraiser, but it also wants to like hurt your feelings. And I feel like that's always the thing that really makes it distinct, is like the number of times when you're just in hell and a thing where you're just like, God, what a fucking bummer. Like in it, there's a point where Swamp Thing like runs into an old enemy and the enemy's like, hey, I just have one question. Like how many years have I been here being tortured like this? Cause it feels like it's just forever. I want to know how long have I been here? And Swamp Thing turns and goes, you went here yesterday. And you just see on the guy's face that like, oh God. And you're just like, what a great moment.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think those are, I mean, and a lot of those I think we're going to get a chance to dip into, but I mean, I mean,
Yeah, and then
the ultimate
the other two I'll
premise
just
of this
throw.
episode is that everything Vertigo is worth giving a shot in some way.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You know, I'm probably not going to throw out a lot to Army at Love, but it's a great book. But the other two that I feel like are seminal ones that are worth checking out for people is 100 Bullets, Brian Azzarello's goddamn masterpiece. And the other one that's in that same kind of run is, come on, brain. I'm still just sitting thinking about hell, is Scalped, Jason Aaron's book, which is a fucking masterpiece. Like, it's a book where you're literally watching a guy go, by the way, I'm the current best writer of comic books. Yoink. And it's just funny because they're, his class he came up with, because I feel like I always think of like him and like Matt Fraction as kind of like two guys who became the Wonderkins, and they're both geniuses, but it's just, and Fraction and Sex Criminals is such a fun book, but like Scalped is a book that like, going between that and Southern Bastards, and you're just like, oh, like this guy just like can write anything, anywhere. And like, I like Jason Aaron could write a phone book, and I think it would be a cool, gritty, but very like grounded and flawed phone book.
That's fucking awesome. All right, let's go to the next question.
Let's do it.
I think Kyle has already partly answered this question on Twitter, but let's dive a little bit deeper into it, which is it's from Cosmic DM, who asks, did Marvel ever have anything to rival Vertigo, or even any comics that felt comparable? And is there anything coming from Vertigo now that you would suggest?
So before we get too deep into this, I want to put you know what? I don't want to give Marvel too much of my airtime. So,
well, I think Kyle didn't either on Twitter.
Let me start with a prepared statement that I've written down. I've got my papers here. You can hear them flapping around. Yo, fuck Marvel.
Thanks, David Ayer.
No, nothing. Not a goddamn thing they've ever done comes even close to anything Vertigo's done. I'm not like mad at Marvel. I mean, I am, but like, they're not. They shouldn't be banned or anything. But like, Marvel.
I don't think anyone was bringing that up.
I mean, I think I heard someone say it in the back. But like literally, like Marvel doesn't I can't even fathom what, because literally I've racked my brain on this because sometimes you're at work and instead of working you just think about a person from Twitter's really good question. Sure. And the closest I can think, even in the same remote ballpark, would be when they were doing their like graphic novel books in like the mid 80s, and you were getting like, the New Mutants book, and the only thing of that run that I can think would come that direction would be God Loves Man Kills from X-Men. And that book, and it's weird because, we're in the middle of them prepping this like new, like the 15th version of the Dark Phoenix, and it's just like, it's just hard to give a shit about them doing like the fucking pumpkin spice latte of X-Men arcs. Like, and I thought that would play better. Thank you. But like, no, like Marvel's never been about like, oh, let's explore the human experience. It's always like, do you think that the man will punch the other man enough? I bet he does. There's things that were trying. I think that Bendis's Daredevil run at one point had ambitions for that, and I feel like the people at Marvel are always sort of like, hey man, could you make the book a little bit dumber and a little easier to understand? And like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a fine piece of entertainment. It's like going and seeing a Marvel movie. Like, you're not a bad person for doing it, but like, don't try to pass it off to me like you're a better person for it.
Right. Now, I mean,
it's not
I know it's
high art.
I know it's not the same as like the Vertigo stuff, but what about even like, just to throw it out there to play devil's advocate, what about like Frank Miller's Daredevil, which I know you brought up the last time that you were on?
Oh, and I think that Frank Miller's Daredevil is again one of the greatest runs in the history of comic books, and I think that like it's influential, and I think that it is a beautiful book. I think that it goes a different direction in what it influences. I think that whereas like Vertigo, I think brought all of comic books at like sequential art, and it elevated it in a way that hadn't happened since like Will Eisner. I think that what Daredevil does is show like, hey, every superhero book, you're bad. Look at what you could be doing. Like it's a phenomenally done book. And I think that like, again, more than anything else, I think you look at that Daredevil run and go, oh, we don't get, Batman Year One without this. We don't get, a ton of the high-end good superhero books in a world where this doesn't happen.
Right. You
know,
can see the trajectory a little bit. Yeah.
I think that you see in what Frank Miller's doing, and I think Frank Miller isn't alone in this. I think that he's operating in the same world as I think like Jim Starlin's doing similar stuff with some of the work that he was doing like before, in the 70s going into the 80s and stuff like that too. And I think him and Frank Miller and some of these people pick up these superhero books and go like, oh, these can be not shitty, and I think that, they part of the thing that's always interesting to me about Daredevil as a character within the superhero context is like, people just don't give enough of a shit that it has the potential at any given point to be the best book no one's reading. And I feel like the Fantastic Four is a similar way, but it's never quite gotten that same pop because I feel like they're so protective of that book. But I think like Mark Waid's run, and I think even what Matt Fraction was doing a few years ago, are all of a similar ilk where they're elevating the art form, but they're not changing the game the same way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now the second half of this question, I mean, you probably covered it a little bit just in the last question, but like new Vertigo, is there anything that you feel like you haven't mentioned that needs a little shout out?
So let's get into this. I think the new Vertigo books all kind of look shitty. I feel like it feels like people relaunching a thing and they don't understand why it was good. Like, and I get that it's trying to reflect like the generation that's existing now, but I don't think Vertigo was necessarily like reflecting the generation that was existing at the time. It doesn't feel like books for Gen Xers. It feels like books for people who like to read. And I'd be upset if it weren't for the fact that like, and I'm gonna say this, and we can feel whatever we want to feel about it. I think that like the best thing to happen to comics in a very long time is Gerard Way.
Well, I was about to ask if like even if Vertigo itself has kind of faltered, like what I kind of see Young Animal as sort of the thing that was maybe taking the place.
I don't even understand why they brought Vertigo back, because Young Animal is literally doing what new Vertigo would be doing.
Yeah, I mean,
Doom seems like such a shitty.
There's Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye, and then Interstellar Eye, Mother Panic. Like there's really like,
and then the Bug book that I can never remember the goddamn name of. That's set
Forager.
That's set in Fourth World. Forager.
And then
holy shit,
also,
that book is cool.
Eternity Girl is in there too.
Yes. And every one of those books is great. And I also feel like, straight DC books owe that run a credit, because, and again, Richard's had to hear me talk about this ad nauseum for like a year now, that without Young Animal, I don't think you get Tom King's Mr. Miracle. And like Mr. Miracle is the greatest comic of the last, I'm gonna say 20 years.
I know. Like, I just finished reading Mr. Miracle 11.
Fuck that ending. Yeah.
I was like,
it's I'm behind on it because like I keep being torn about like how whether I want to like keep inch by inch doing it, or whether I think I'm like 6 or 7 in, and like part of me is like, what if I just waited till this end of November for the trade?
Well, this doesn't spoil anything, but it's affected the way I look at veggie trays.
That's
oh my god, you're right.
It's that book kind of pulled me back from bailing on comics for a minute there. Like, cause I was sort of like so just done with all of it. And that book, that first issue of Mr. Miracle, Tom King's Mr. Miracle, and like, and his Vision book is good. Like the stuff, Thief of Baghdad
I think you, in the way that you were saying that you can see Alan Moore kind of like learning through things like V for Vendetta, I think you can see the progress too in something like the Omega Men from just a couple of years ago. Even
100%.
Even down to like structurally how the panels are laid out, and that there's a lot of similarities between that and Mr. Miracle, but Mr. Miracle is such a like a more refined kind of version of it.
And it's fun because it is this run of like, like I said, with like guys like Fraction and Aaron really doing interesting and cool stuff. And it was so fun that all of a sudden on my radar, kind of out of nowhere, this guy who I like sort of know exists shows up, and literally like that first issue is another one, kind of like the Alan Moore Swamp Thing, where I like picked it up and just looked at it and was like, I read it twice before I sat up again, because I was like, no, that can't be that good. That's not allowed. Like, and you read it again, and just going through all the dark side is, and the way it's paced, and how dark it is, but also how like I've always felt like Fourth World is such an untapped resource for storytelling.
I think
it's
a lot
such
of
an
people
amazing.
I think a lot of people don't know what to do with it. Don't know how to approach it.
Yes, 100% agreed.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next question.
All right.
From the I'm pretty sure Kyle writes for Talking Superman.
I think we made this joke.
I think I did. I have nothing but old jokes.
Reach into the old recycled joke.
Look, I think we can agree that I'm no Superman.
Oh.
Yeah, but if I go crazy, would you still call me Superman?
Well played, sir.
My brain's just going like, what's that Crash Test Dummy song?
Yeah. Well, you didn't make any money saving the world from Solomon Grundy.
Fuck, that's right. God damn. Well, Talking
I think
Superman.
we can all agree that we're all very sad.
Yeah. Superman's dead. Our Lady Peas? Anybody? Yeah.
Did the Americans know about?
Yeah, do Americans know about Our Lady Peas?
I mean, I do, but also no.
OLP.
Chuck you.
I remember when I was young, because when I went up for the festival the last time I was on your guys' show, at one point I was in a car with I think it was one of the documentary people, and they were saying something, and they said something about, they said the hip. And I had to pretend I wasn't super excited that somebody said it, because I wasn't going to like bully somebody into bringing it up. I needed someone to organically bring up the tragically
It's
hip.
in Canada. It'll happen.
And then what was great is people started referring to like watching any band on TV as the hip on TV. Like when we were in Dawson City, they were like, "We're watching the Grammys, watching the hip on TV," and I was like, that guy is dead. They're not on the Grammys this year, or the Junos, or whatever the fuck you people.
You
have.
had such a specific experience of Canada.
But what was even better was that it reminded me of when I was wait, let me really make myself a cool guy in a couple of sentences here. I used to have an instant messenger friend that I had met on a Resident Evil forum.
Jesus.
Like we had talked enough on the forum that it's like, hey, go check, hit me up at SlackerXK and we can talk on AIM.
Jesus.
Kyle's had girlfriends and has had sex, just so everybody knows.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense to anyone, let alone me. But I remember talking to her and I was saying, "Oh, are you you're from Canada? Are you a fan of the Tragically Hip?" And she's like, "Well, obviously, but I'm more of an Our Lady Peace person." And I just like that, for whatever reason, that conversation has always stuck with me.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that is a great fucking Canadian sentence.
On that note, what does Talking Superman say?
Oh, they ask, how did that painting eat Paris?
Okay, so before we get into it, did you hear, Kyle, that they cast Alan Tudyk as Mr. Nobody for the Doom Patrol show?
Oh, that's pretty great. I can get
Right?
behind that. That's pretty perfect.
And I bring that up obviously because Mr. Nobody and the Brotherhood of Dada are a big part of this painting that ate Paris.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually because Doom Patrol was the thing I was real late to. I only got into it maybe 5-6 years ago, and that in Painting 8 Paris, what has one of my favorite moments in all of Doom Patrol. Actually, I think that almost that entire volume, the Painting 8 Paris, like volume 2 of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, has maybe my top 2 moments in the entire series are both in that book. The number one, of course, being when the super smart gorilla and the brain in the jar are about to die in an explosion and they confess their love to each other and kiss while they die.
That's right. It's Brain and Monsieur Malin.
That's, yeah. I mean, you know what book that doesn't happen in? Spider-Man.
Yeah, fuck you, Marvel.
God, Kevin Feige is never gonna say, yes, leave in the part where the gay brain in a jar and the gay monkey kiss before they die.
Yeah, that's fair. So do you want to maybe walk Talking Superman through what exactly the painting that ate Paris was?
Okay, so the Brotherhood of Dada, I'm trying to remember because the plots in those early Doom Patrols are real, not the point. But basically they steal this painting that consumes the world around it, and the idea is that it's going to slowly absorb the entire world into this painting and leave the world just an empty nothing. Because the Brotherhood of Dada feel like the world being an empty nothing is the ultimate artistic statement based on their meaningless world of villainy. And so they set up the painting in the middle of Paris, and the painting eats Paris. And so now there's just like an empty desert landscape, and so the Doom Patrol have to go. But in that moment I was getting to before I got distracted, the Justice League, the Keith Giffen Justice League International are standing at the painting, and I believe it's either I think it's Booster Gold, and I forget who's with him, and then Animal Man is there. So it's Animal Man, Booster Gold, let's say Blue Beetle, but it could be Martian Manhunter. And they're looking at the painting, and they're literally just three guys in superhero costumes standing in front of a painting, in a city that is no longer existing, with their arms crossed, going like, we're more of a punching group. We don't really, we don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
And the Doom Patrol, and Animal Man's like, yeah, this is crazy. They're like, shut up, man. Like, you're barely on this team. And then the Doom Patrol walk by. They don't even say hello. They just look at them, and it's like Robot Man with his leather jacket on, and Crazy Jane, and Rebus, and they just crawl into the painting, and like, there's almost like this, like, ugh. And literally, as soon as they leave, Booster Gold's like, I fucking hate those guys.
Yeah.
And then, like, Animal Man's like, they're all right.
There's a little bit of
and they say to Animal Man, like, you're weird and shitty too. And I love it, because it's just like, oh, I love that they would hate those guys.
There's a little bit of that in, like, the Milk Wars, like, crossover between Young Animal and the main DC. There's a little bit of that idea. I can't remember the exact setup, but it's something to the effect of, like, no, like, we deal with the crazy shit. Like...
And knowing that Gerard Way is one of those guys who is a insane Morrison nerd like me, like, I love that one of the things that I love about him is that he unabashedly throws in these, like, cameos or references to really deep cut stuff that, like, no one is going to look at him and go like, oh, I'm sure glad that Rockstar co-signed that super specific book from old Doom Patrol.
Yeah. Well, hey, do you know what? I'm going to throw this out there for fans of our show, because I read Milk Wars. It's a hilarious, like, crazy, distracting crossover. But in it, and this is not a spoiler at this point, the sort of, like, ultimate kind of thing you have to watch out for in there is Mr. Nebula, who's best known as, like, that's DC's pastiche of Galactus. So Mr. Nebula, he references the Scarlet Skier, who astute listeners of our podcast will remember is the archenemy of Gnort.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's fucking rad.
Yeah, so that's the painting that ate Paris.
Awesome.
I'm kind of hoping that shows up in the Doom Patrol show if they've cast Mr. Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
So it would be kind of neat if they took that on, yeah.
That's an easy story, I think, to tell, too.
I'm really looking forward to the Brotherhood of Dada popping up in that thing. And even more so than the painting that ate Paris, I want Mr. Nobody running for president.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, fuck, that's going to be...
Because I love when they bring him back and they're like, here's another arc. By the way, did we mention fuck yourself?
Oh, shit. All right, the next question comes from Christian Taylor, who bookmarks this question actually by saying, love Richard and Kyle Clark's episodes and collaborations, which I like that.
Yeah, again, the third wheel of my own fucking podcast.
Well, look, maybe you and I can also build a couple of unfinished websites.
You son of a bitch.
I was... you know what? That's a hilarious joke, but I'm not going to lie. I was a little disappointed that I didn't just get invited onto This Is Rad.
I love it. That's the way.
I'm such a fucking ladder climber.
Richard, did you get my message, by the way, about how I need you to change something already on that website that I haven't had you finish yet, but I still need something removed?
Yes.
No, do you know what? Air this out now.
If it's the thing I think it is, I already did it, and I told you did it. Unless there's another new thing.
It took me a good solid day to work up the nerve to, like, send you that message, because I'm like, this is some balls on my part.
Remember that thing that I still haven't done it? It's been like over a year. Can you make more edits to it?
Hey, I know I haven't given you key information about the website that you 100% need to finish it, but could you fix part of it that you were already able to do?
That's amazing.
Oh,
that's very funny.
Oh, I love you. All right.
So what does Christian Taylor actually have to ask us?
He goes on to say, what series could have continued longer than it actually did? And does Why the Last Man stick the landing like I've been told? So I don't know if either of you have finished that, but
I have not. It's on the list to finish, but I have not yet, just because it's so goddamn long.
I did actually finish Why the Last Man. That one, I'll say it does technically stick the landing because it is satisfying, but there's a part of me, and I might have mentioned this on the show before, but like I have a bit of a theater background, but I've got a thing where when I go to a play or a show or even like movies now, if the ending is too resolved, I don't trust it. I'm like, I have like an inherent,
thank you. I agree.
I have an inherent distrust of things wrapping up. You know,
I don't love the concept of sticking the landing because, like, I get why people want things to stick the landing, but I kind of like when you don't necessarily leave it all unfolded because, like, to me, good art should leave you a little haunted at the end.
Well, but, and this is the thing. I'm gonna pull a reference that Richard will appreciate, but let's say like Harry Potter. I love those books.
Yes.
I grew up with that shit. I'm into it. The thing that I inherently distrust is that epilogue.
Really?
Like they're happy ending shit.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's how it goes, but I don't need to see it. I don't need to hear about it. That kind of almost like ruins the storytelling for me because the other thing with that is that unlike other fantasy, their whole epic quest didn't change fucking anything. Their society remains unchanged. They've learned nothing. But
she was like, I gotta put this epilogue on so that I make sure I never write a bunch of tacked on sequels and spin-offs.
It worked so well.
Oh god, I have the book for that fucking play, and it's just I can't even get through it.
But you know what I mean. So there's something about like Why the Last Man does end satisfyingly, but I think I distrust an ending that feels like not depressing, basically. Like I think my inherent thing in my head is if a story goes on long enough, it ends depressingly. And the reason that I'm okay with comic book arcs like ending like we beat them is because I know it's serialized. They keep going, right? Like it hasn't ended. But I think if they were just like comic books are done, superheroes are done, and they were just like, oh, you beat the secret society, I'd be like, oh no, wait, like what? Like I don't think I would buy it.
There's versions of it that I think do end well. I think Preacher ends really, really well. I think Preacher has an incredibly satisfying ending. I think Sandman has an incredibly satisfying ending. I think like one of the best examples of way to do it, it's a much shorter version of it, but like I always feel like Watchmen, the comic book version of Watchmen, has such a solid ending where like the world is a different place than where it started as.
But also,
and I think that like,
but I can buy that ending because it's not happy. You know what I mean? Like, I think my thing is...
Well, Sandman's the same way. Like, Sandman ends in such a way... Like, the last issue of Sandman's so funny to me because, like, everything's over and there's just, like, a coda where you just get a nice story about William Shakespeare and that's how the book ends.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, let's go to the first part of that question, which was what series could have continued longer than it actually did?
That's tough because I think Vertigo books feel to me like like British
complete stories,
British sitcoms, right? Like they write what it's meant to be and then it's done.
Vertigo books exist the way I wish TV shows did. Like instead of it going like we got to run forever to make this go, like they go as long as they have to. And when, you feel when the end is coming, you feel the end game, even in like a book like, again, like Why the Last Man or Fables is another great example where like it goes on for fuck off forever, and in Fables case, like I think one of the things that's the most interesting thing about Fables is that like the middle of the book, that book constantly changes who your main characters are. Like by the time you're midway through that series, no one from the original first issue is even in the book. Most of them are dead or haven't been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's like a generation.
But then when some of those characters pop back up, you know that shit's real and like you're coming in for a landing here just because of like how seismic it feels and with those shifts and stuff like that. Or like school, you hit a point where like you go through your 4 years of high school and at the end of it, there is a definitive ending. And I think like a good ending like that is something where like you finish and you wrap up and it feels satisfying, but it doesn't mean that the story's over forever. Like I always feel like you leave, enough to go like, oh, I wonder where it goes from there. But we went through the interesting part.
I can't think of a Vertigo book that I have experience with that I would want it to have kept going. I mean, there's obviously things like Swamp Thing. There's always going to be another Swamp Thing story, but that's not the same as it being like that Swamp Thing story. I don't know that I actually have one that I think should have gone longer.
I guess that's a good sign.
I'm trying to think because I feel like there's something I'm not thinking of. I mean, there's stuff that like didn't quite take off the way I thought they could have. Like, I think that, like, you know, the one that immediately comes to mind is Brother Power, which was like a real early one-off that I thought was like a really cool concept, and I love what they were doing with it. And I think it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. And in a lot of ways, I think that, like, what they did with that book was really good. And then Shade the Changing Man, you know, comes up and is kind of a similar set of ideas. And, you know, I think that, like, other things did what that book was aiming to do in a little more sophisticated and well put together way. So it kind of got dealt with. The only thing I can ever think of is the one answer I can think of definitively would be Hellblazer. Like, I think that they fucked up ending that book. Cause, like, I like, Hellblazer is something that, like, should just run forever, and you should just always have some cool, like, you know, European writer writing a really dark magic book reflecting whatever's happening in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I can get on board with that. Yeah.
You know, I do feel like when Hellblazer ended, I did have a way, like, more of a, you know, cause it's not even like a book I was buying monthly, even when I was buying monthlies. But it's just a book that, like, knowing it was out there and knowing periodically I could pick up new Hellblazer and take a look at it, like, always felt like a real, like, you know, okay, I can set my watch to this. And when that ended, I was just like, oh, I don't know what to believe in anymore.
All right, let's go to the next question from Stump Chunkman.
Step into the Stump Chunkman.
My boy.
So Stump asks, is the Alan Moore Swamp Thing as good as it sounds? I picked up the first 24 issues at Pan Expo.
It's better. It's better than it's even hyped to be.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so fucking good.
I think it is just unfounded how good it is. I think there's nobody that would say otherwise. I think it does things with that storyline that hadn't been done before, and just
I'll say this, by the way. Worth reading. If you want a good time, on YouTube, it's in 5 parts. There's a, like, 30-40 minute mini documentary that was pulled off a VHS tape called Alan Moore and Swamp Thing, that was a DC promo video that is, like, Karen Berger and Alan Moore and all these other people and, like, Len Wein pops up in there. And it's them talking about Alan Moore taking over Swamp Thing, and just, it's this little promo like, by the way, this is really good. Sure wish that Comic-Con would exist soon. And what's really fun is at the very end, the last 2 minutes of the video are like nerd heroin, because they're like Alan, and it's Alan Moore when he's still, like, very enthusiastic about the world. And it's funny because, like, when he lists his, like, things he wishes, like, comic books would do, he's like, I wish we'd get away from superheroes. I wish we'd have more diversity in the writers and points of view of stories. Like, Alan Moore created the vision of comic books that we're still fucking up and not doing. Like, it's so funny how he lists that. But then at the very end, after they ask him to list out what we are still striving for comic books to be, they're like, so what are you working on next? And he's like, oh, well, me and my buddy Dave Givens are working on this book that DC just signed off on called Watchmen. And it seems like it's kind of fun. And I'm working on it. And it's him pitching Watchmen before he's finished writing it. And you're like, holy shit, I am looking at one of the best writers of all time who is pitching you his masterpiece before he's written it.
That's kind of amazing.
I need to watch that now.
And I had such a nerdgasm watching it, going like, oh my god, what a cool thing that somebody documented somewhere. Like, why are we all not losing our minds about this on Reddit every day?
That reminds me of that. What was that documentary about the sort of like it was like indie games? Do you remember that documentary? In it, like they're like talking to the guy as he's developing like Braid for the first. And it's just like, oh my god.
And he's like, I sure hope Braid is good. Also, I've got an idea for another game called What If Tiles Were Confusing and Dots and Lines.
It's fucking so... Yeah, that's a fucking awesome documentary. Definitely worth checking out. But yes, that Alan Moore... I mean, we've talked about it, I think,
that documentary should be called Phil Fishman is going to Continue to Have a Bad Time.
That's 100% true. Oh, that poor guy's life. Fuck. All right, let's go to the next question, because I think we've talked so much about Swamp Thing already, but definitely worth reading.
Yeah, let's do it.
Read all of it.
Yes.
Do it.
So last question on Twitter is from Shane Webb, our Australian buddy.
Shrimp on the barbie.
G'day. You offended yet?
You goddamn Commonwealths.
Oh, you drongo.
Shane asks, what's your favorite Vertigo character and a good jumping off point to get a better understanding of that character?
Well, I feel like Kyle, you've already said that yours is Constantine.
I thought his favorite character was Morpheus. I remember you on that Greatest of All Time, the nerd goat.
Oh yeah, well, but for me, like greatest Morpheus is because like again, Sandman changed the way I looked at comics. But for me, like definitively, like the characters for like that define Vertigo to me, I feel like number one's John Constantine, and I feel like as hacky as it is, I think Dangerous Habits is the perfect starting place. Like, it's such a good, concise arc. It works really well. There's also a book that came out as a promo for when the Constantine movie, which I do have a soft spot for, came out, called Rare Cuts or something like that. And it's just a kind of a weird, they just took single issues that kind of define the tone of who Constantine is. And that's a pretty good one as well. But I would say Dangerous Habits is like the book that you just got to go pick up and read. Because of all the the Hellblazer books, it's probably the like seminal, if you only read one, that's the one to read. I would say Cassidy though from Preacher is right up there, and I think that like his origin story I think that pops up in Proud Americans is such a great story. Like just this drunk, shit talking, sunglasses clad, jean vest wearing vampire Irishman is everything Vertigo is in one character.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go and say. Swamp Thing, but then specifically within sort of that realm, Anton Arcane. I'm fascinated by that character. I love the idea of this sort of like undead necromancer. He's too twisted. Like he crosses lines I wouldn't even expect the Joker or some character like that to cross. Like Anton Arcane is such like incarnate evil. He's like, performs like eugenics experiments and stuff like that. He's such like an unholy kind of evil. It works so well in like a sort of horror genred book like Swamp Thing. So I think for me, it's Anton Arcane.
I got one more that I got to throw out because we have not given her due yet is Death. And I would say Death, High Cost of Living is, even if you don't like comics, that's a book I recommend to people. I think like High Cost of Living is such a like great example of what comic books can be and how emotionally like resonant they can be. And really like Death is, created a template for a comic book reading goth woman that I've been chasing the rest of my life. So I feel like, it's just me holding copies of that on a fishing line outside of a Dresden Dolls concert going like, hey, who wants to hang out? Does anybody want to go listen to Echo and the Bunnymen and talk about what medications they're on?
Such a specific description.
Oh, what a vivid window. Yeah.
Holy shit.
My God. Richard, do you have one?
I mean, I have to.
Have you read
Sandman? I've definitely read. I think that like that character obviously is seminal when you talk about Vertigo. But I'd like to recommend the Dream Hunters.
Ooh. I
think that book is so good. I was just like reading up about it again, and I was just fuck. I'm like, I don't want to ruin too much about that story, but I just think that like that book is really, really
interesting choice.
I just, for me, like the whole like fox spirit and a badger sort of do that whole wager about which of them drives a Buddhist monk from his temple. I think
Canada is showing.
Oh, every time.
I like the one where the two hats talked.
oh yeah, bud.
I just think both of them fail, and they end up like the badger flees in disgrace, and like it's such a fucking cool like it reminds me of like one of those like old wives' tales or like one of those like stories that gets passed on, and it's like a story that already existed that they just were retelling. And
it feels like oral history a little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that would be my
that's one of those great things about the Sandman universe as a whole is that when it's done well, it feels like something that is timeless, that you're just being told for the first time, but has always existed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. Fuck, they got to do more with that character. It pisses me off that they haven't.
Or they could just read all the stuff that's already there.
Yeah, I just meant that like I want to see it visually. More content. Do we sound like podcasters yet?
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Let's head over to Facebook then.
Go to the face in the book. Go over to the Facebook.
We got drops now.
Well, that happened.
Yeah.
We had drops last time, but I was like refreshing myself for the vibe of this by like listening to the last episode that Kyle was on. We did have drops.
Did we?
But you fucking
Oh,
chickened the
fucking
shit
you
out because you get embarrassed in front of your fucking
Well,
friends.
now you have to do them because I took over this job, so fuck you. All right, well, let's go to the first question from Michael O'Brien,
right.
who asks, not so much a question. Well, then we're not going to answer it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, fuck you. Who asks, but would love to hear talk about some of the crossover elements of the regular DC characters showing up. Dr. Destiny, Justice League, Daniel's parentage, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
my favorite is that John Constantine and Zatanna bang sometimes.
yeah, totally. And
like,
you know,
because to me it's always like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and into Swamp Thing, right? Swamp Thing 50 is the issue where Constantine's got all of the sorcerers they're trying to hold back, like the darkness, and then Zatanna is
cool
killed.
One too.
You know, like that's, and Phantom Stranger's in that issue. Etrigan, like they pull a bunch of that sort of like the dark side of DC into that issue.
Well, and one of the things I loved about Kevin Smith's run on Green Arrow is when he goes in that basement and Morpheus is just being held in the basement and you realize it's the house that summoned Morpheus from the first issue of Sandman.
Yeah.
And it's just like such a fun, like, Easter eggy nerd out moment, but it's just like, it's so fun because, like, Kevin Smith was such a big, like, Vertigo nerd, in his comic days that it's funny to just be able to watch him throw that out and just be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that is for the people it's great.
It feels a little bit like what we were just talking about. To me, when those crossovers happen, you see Superman or whatever, you see these like really like iconic mainstream characters sort of in this sphere. It feels like they're encountering like I hate using this word because it's overused in comics, but like the secret history of that universe, right? That these things that are happening in Vertigo are happening behind the scenes. They've always happened. It's just part of the material existence of that universe. And it's these people who usually are punching satellites are finally like just have these random encounters where they're like, oh, like you're doing shit this whole time? Like
one of the things that and Richard got about 40 text messages from me ranting about this. And I feel like we could do a whole episode on it separate at some point is like, I think one of the things that DC does really well that it doesn't celebrate itself near enough for is like they spend so much time on their like top tier heroes, and to the point where we maybe hear a podcast where people talk about how Aquaman has a movie and his dumb clothes are in it. But if you go even one level underneath that, like DC is both the corniest and coolest comic publisher at the same time. And I think it's the reason that Marvel's able to eat their lunch is that DC shows up with some, Aquaman and Green Lantern weak ass shit. And meanwhile, like they have 1,000 insane, godlike, Satanist, super deep cut, politically deep, weird, gender bending fucking heroes in their books that they're not ever bringing up. And it's like meeting like a farmer who like you think is just some weird coot. And then you walk inside and it turns out they're this like super genius, hyper progressive person that you never thought of. And I feel like that is DC Comics to a T, is it seems like this fucking Superman dork book like company. And then underneath everything, like I've never seen a company of any fiction product where like Satan and the world of the devil is prominently featured in every book at some point or another.
Right, yeah. Well, and
like it's so fucking metal and they don't talk about it.
Yeah, no, totally. And is there like a more perfect kind of marriage of those two things than what came up in this question, which is Daniel Hall, who takes over as Dream. Daniel Hall is the son of Hector Hall and Lita Hall, which is Silver Scarab and Fury. Hector Hall himself is the son of Carter and Shaira Hall, Hawkman and Hawkwoman. And so like you have this like direct lineage from like the Capes and Tights crew. And then, but Daniel Hall is born in the Dreaming, because the Hall family is sort of captured there and Hector Hall's spirit is sort of held there for a bit.
Motherfucking doll's house.
Yeah, exactly. And, so eventually, Daniel, basically takes over for Morpheus, becomes the new, Dream because he's born in the Dreaming.
Spoiler.
So, but that's, yeah, spoiler. Yeah. Right. But that's literally, it starts with capes and tights, like conventional superheroes, and blends very sort of naturally and very like organically, I think, into that sort of like, the weird ethereal otherworldly like realm of things like the dreaming and the endless and stuff like that.
And even beyond that, like I was saying before, with the fact that like, they have that John Constantine and Zatanna have had this thing. And I just love that, like, and again, it's a thing that I feel like DC doesn't get enough credit for. Like, their characters fuck, like, a lot, and each other, and nobody's weird about it. Like, the fact that, like, Green Arrow and John Constantine are Eskimo brothers is amazing, and I feel like not a thing that everyone talks about enough.
Yeah. Well, have you not seen the new solicitations for Green Arrow, John Constantine, Eskimo brothers? It's a 6-issue mini. It's a...
Jesus Christ.
I would read the shit out of that.
It's written by Scott Lobdell.
Deal breaker. But that's like a funny thing, is I feel like there is this layer of like adult maturity to DC books that I feel like Vertigo kind of like echoed through the rest of DC. And I think that there's other like people working through DC that were also pushing that agenda, but that like, how long have we been like, I hope Spider-Man and Mary Jane one day like hold hands. And meanwhile, like even Batman's just like, I don't got a shirt on, but I'm gonna fuck you with my mask. No cowl, no love.
I think that's the only way Batman does that.
It's true. Though he did pull out his dick recently and got in a whole bunch of trouble for that. So
yeah, that's true.
Because Batman damned.
Like, it's just like that's such an interesting aspect that gets quietly passed over.
True. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go on to the emails.
Check the email.
Hope it's from a female. Yeah, that just...
Has that ever happened?
Yeah, occasionally.
We get emails from females.
Yeah, sometimes females like this show.
They do. Don't you believe us?
May I ask a follow-up question? Were they your wives?
Shut up.
My wife doesn't listen to this.
Yeah, it's true. Neither of ours wives do. My wife's in the same house right now.
I've met both of your wives. They're both far too cool for both of you.
I know. I spend hours a week like away working on this. My wife is raising our daughter. My daughter like doesn't know who I am.
You keep coming home to hear something about some guy named Kyle, but
I mean, I loved, because I met your wife before you, Dr. DC, and I love that I was introduced to, like, this is this hard-looking woman, and she's married to that guy for some reason.
When you brought it up, because you met her before she had our baby and she was on maternity leave, so she was actually like working at this festival that you were up for, and you said that you met her and she was like, you're going to be talking about Morrison with my husband tomorrow, and the way you put it was, she grabbed my wrist so tightly.
I mean, she did hurt me a little.
She's so relieved.
I have very sensitive wrists, so like some of it's on me.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's amazing. All right, well, let's go. First question. This was such a fucking cock tease. Well, I look at the email subject of like who this email was from, and it just says, it says Neil Gaiman. I was like, what?
That would have been amazing.
As if that was even possible.
If it was from Neil Gaiman, it would have been like a preemptive cease and desist. I don't want you discussing my work. Like,
yeah, that was. And then I look at the email and it's just like not Neil Gaiman at gmail.com.
Such a fucking dick move. I can't believe people can put in fake emails in that form.
We gotta stop telling them that they can do that, so they'll stop doing that. Yeah. So now here's the time to finally dig down into this character.
All right.
Neil says, let's talk Sandman. What do you think is the biggest success or contribution of this series to comics in general? How do you feel about how it kind of crossed in and out of the continuity with regular DC?
So we kind of touched on the crossing in and out thing, but yeah, if we had to pin down like what is like the thing that Sandman brought that sort of changed the game, what would you say that was?
For me, I think that Sandman is almost in itself kind of its own history of modern comics in one book, because it pulls artistically and writing wise from old EC stuff from like the 50s, and then also superhero stuff from the Silver Age and Bronze, and then the weird kind of like horror tinge stuff of like the Bronze Age, and then filters all of that through the like Alan Moore, Frank Miller vision of 80s comic books into this thing that like takes everything and spins it into its own unique voice that shows that like comics don't have to be this segregated art form and instead can be all things to all people in one book. You just have to be one of the best working comic book writers of the time.
Yeah. If you can at least be that. Yeah.
Like, if you, well, and it's funny because, like, you can pitch Sandman kind of as a superhero book where it's like, well, it's about a pale dude who has magic powers and he stops bad dream creatures. But if you pitch it that way, you're an asshole. But you can. Like, but at the same time, you could also pitch it as, well, do you ever, like, look at Superman and go, yeah, but is there, what is the concept of God like in a world where Superman exists? Because Neil Gaiman was like, well, I have an idea, and it fucking works.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how such like they are such like disparate ideas, but again, they like it doesn't feel unnatural when they make contact with each other. I mean that depends. That depends a little bit on the nature of the contact and who's writing that particular instance. But like but as a concept, it doesn't feel wrong to have things like the dreaming encounter other things like, you know, the Phantom Zone or whatever the hell. I think in Morrison's map of the multiverse, Phantom Zone and like the dreaming and things like that occupy the same sort of sphere. They're that like sphere of the gods kind of region.
Well, that seems to be the thing that, like, Morrison has really, like, got DC by the balls on, is that DC seems to be like, I feel like he may be the only person who actually understands what we made.
Yeah, they need to,
so, like it feels like they've got to keep him around, because he will justify, like, Marvel does not have a Grant Morrison who, like, will literally figure out a way to MacGyver all of their continuities together into one thing that makes it sound like they were all part of the same plan all along.
Exactly, yeah. They need to put his brain into, like, a bunch of old tapes, like, what's his fuck in the Winter Soldier.
The other thing I'll say about Sandman that I think is interesting is that it is a book that kind of starts out for its first two arcs organized kind of like a traditional superhero book. There's a villain, there's like a quest, there are side characters affected by that. And then it's funny because I feel like there's all those little one-off stories in and amongst, you know, like you have, you know, the first issue where like Death's really in it and things like that. And then you go through Dream County, and when it comes out the other side, it is like, I always feel like Seasons of the Mist is really the first time the book is Sandman. Like before that, it's all this kind of like prototype book that's getting figured out. And then all of a sudden, 4 arcs in, like, you know, he's distracted with all these fun one-off stories that again feel like kind of a throwback to old world comics. And then it comes out the other end and is like, now we're not only like ahead of where all other comics are going, we're also no longer a book where we have to have like a big bad. Like all the arcs after that are just these weird existential stories of like, what if the devil quits being the devil? Or what if you have a lost family member that means that like, you know, that's a condemnation of like the concept of violence in your life, and like all these variations on that I think you had to like, they're like Neil Gaiman and Karen Berger and everybody working at Vertigo is like figuring this shit out as they go. You know, and it's funny because when you look at Sandman, it's almost organized at a certain point, basically how all modern TV is. You know, I think that Vertigo in a lot of ways not just influenced comics, but is how all TV storylines are structured now.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a hell of an answer to this question. It's like the biggest impact of Sandman is what it did to TV.
Well, go back and look at Preludes and Nocturnes in a Doll's House and realize that is Dexter.
Oh, yeah.
For me, like, what I love about Sandman so much is that it like when you start describing him, it feels like overly complicated, but it's never really too heady when you start reading it. Like it doesn't throw tons of bullshit at you and just hope that you get it. It's about like
I think most of. Oh, good.
I was just going to say, like, it's about like intricate, like interwoven lives between normal people and magical, sort of like otherworldly beings, and how so often like these lives are affected and often indirectly by Dream. Like we all know Dream. We visit the like his domain every night.
Yeah.
But maybe like that's what makes Sandman great, I think.
I also think it's interesting that like most of Vertigo's books do a really good job of that classic comic book thing of like, every book is somebody's first comic book, but I think that like with especially like classic Vertigo books, if you jump on at the beginning of an arc, enough information is going to be contextually given to you that you can strap in and have a good time. Like, with any of those books, like I think that the two best examples are like, I think like 100 Bullets is great for that because like, the story kind of changes and like Graves is always there, but at the same time there's like stuff going on. Like, the first one I ever read was Hang Up on the Hang Low because I'd heard it was a good story. And I had no idea any of the rest of the stuff in 100 Bullets, but I loved that arc. And I was like, oh, this is super cool. And I think that they do a really good job of, without having to have a previously on page that gives you a bunch of kind of confusing information, they just really organically bring you in with a start of a fresh story, and you can follow that narrative. And as it goes along, you start to understand those relationships.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly said. Let's go to the next question from apparently Yolanda.
Oh,
there could be the female.
It's not my Londa.
It's Yolanda.
It's Yolanda.
Yolanda asks, what do you think about how Constantine aged in real time in Hellblazer?
So I love that you had brought up that 40th birthday issue earlier because that was a thing that was kind of almost unique, I think, to Hellblazer, is that he aged in real time. That doesn't mean that like as issues were coming out, every issue had like a month between it or anything like that. But generally speaking, if the book had been out for 3 years, then they said he was X
3 years,
age, right? He would be 3 years older there, which is kind of ballsy to do. It, in a weird way, the New 52 kind of did that too. Like every year of the New 52, they'd be like, "Oh, it's been X many years since Darkseid invaded," and be like, guys, like, you need to slow this continuity down. You're gonna run out of fucking Batman stories. But Hellblazer did that, and it worked. You got to see him like get older and age, and it's a thing that's like so not admitted in like, well, it's not really a superhero comic, but you know what I mean. In that sphere, you don't let characters grow old.
Yeah, like how
like
Batman's always like 28 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that was super unique. But that 40th birthday issue, it kind of like highlights that.
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense if you think about it on a long enough timeline, especially for Hellblazer, in that like you can't have this like guy who was in the 77 punk scene and hates Thatcher all of a sudden have it be 1990 and him just being still this like young guy. I think that like that, but because that book is such a like rumination on the idea of what it means to be English in whatever the version of England is at those given times, that I think you have to like have a guy get old in a way that like people reading it, that's one of those weird things. Like I love that book, but like I'm gotta be fascinated if you're British. That book is so fucking British. And, and even when Azzarello takes him to America for like Hard Time and stuff like that, it is an old middle-aged English man looking at post 9/11 America, and like what a fascinating thing that is.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I like it too. I mean, if you need the suspension of disbelief that he can still go on adventures, you get the lovely out that he's magic, but like he still gets to age. Learn or not learn things, but sort of feed all of those experiences more naturally than trying to like shoehorn 80 years of continuity into like, oh yeah, when did that Ultra Humanite thing happen? I guess it was like technically 2 weeks ago because we got to shoehorn all of this continuity into one thing. But
that's really funny.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next question. This one's from Jesse.
Jesse.
It could be I think it's a male Jesse, maybe.
All right.
But it could be a female.
I bet it is.
Yeah. Fuck you. Jesse asks, he says, hello, sirs of Dr. DC podcast. Perhaps one of the coolest comics or graphic novels concepts I've heard was Get Jiro, a Rouge Renegade's sushi chef that two sides of a culinary crime war want. Thoughts on the comic and what other novel or out of left field stories are recommended based on that comic? Thanks, Jesse. P.S. More emo Richard picks. Makes me think that this might be PUBG pastries.
Yeah, so Get Jiro was Anthony Bourdain's comic that he had written.
Yeah, Get Jiro was a cool book. Like it was a neat one. If we're talking like Vertigo ones for their one-offs, I misquoted it earlier. I meant to say Sheriff of Babylon, but Pride of Baghdad from Brian K. Vaughan's really good. I would also say I Paparazzi is one that I feel like was real big for a minute and then has kind of disappeared out of people's conversations, and it is really, really good. And also, I believe Kill Your Boyfriends through Vertigo, the fucking Grant Morrison one, and that's fun because it's just murderous chaos. God, I forgot about Get Jiro. That was a fun book.
It was good. It felt like such like a genre piece, right? Like it almost leaned into like the sort of kung fu thing, which is maybe too cliche, but like I don't know, it worked. I liked it. I thought it was kind of fun. It's also just like a ridiculous premise that like the war is culinary, like you know what I mean? Like,
two other ones from. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
Talking on the phone is hard, and I'm bad at it. Two other ones that I would say from that same kind of, actually three. The Quitter from Harvey Pekar was a really interesting thing. You know, when they were really starting to do their one-offs. Silverfish from David Lapham is so fucking good. It's basically like, it's funny because like I love Stray Bullets. It's another one of my favorite books, of all time. And it's funny because it almost feels like Vertigo got him and was like, all right, like it's their version of making a Stray Bullets movie where like they can't use any of the things, but like it's still that same tone and art and stuff like that. Because it just feels like a very expensive version of an issue of Stray Bullets. And then in that same vein, The Alcoholic from Jonathan Ames. Like, God bless Jonathan Ames for going like, fuck it, I'm also going to write a Vertigo book.
Yeah. Filthy
Richard from Azzarello is real good.
Recommendations to rival those at all. Yeah, those are all great ones.
Nice. Also, I burned all those photos, so unless you get them from Kyle, you're not getting them from me.
Oh, I got them.
Can I have those?
Again, talk to Kyle. I burned them.
It's funny. I feel like you and I exchange an awful lot of like photos of ourselves back and forth with two people who aren't technically dating.
Emphasis on technically.
Yeah, I was going to say that word was telling.
Oh fuck. Let's go to Reddit where everybody's happy and no one's ever mean.
Yeah, that's right. It's all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep, everybody's nice on Reddit. From T3 Delicious with a Z instead of an S.
Wait, like Tylenol 3? Like delicious Tylenol 3s?
Oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
Oh my god, dude, like talk to someone, man.
Is that like the kid's new scissor? Is that what that is?
What?
What's a scissor? It's what they used to with the.
Is that like whippets or something?
I mean, kind of, isn't it? It's
cough medicine with codeine in it.
Yeah.
They call it scissor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hip hop
or lean.
Being a parent is a terrifying labyrinth. It's,
I don't think anybody does scissor any longer, but maybe.
Like it gave all those rappers seizures.
Oh fuck!
Jesus Christ!
It also made Lil Wayne, so.
Wait, really?
I'm pretty sure he's just a culmination of that.
I'm so lost by everything that was just said. I'm realizing how like old at heart I am.
Well, you're not cool kids like me and Kyle.
Like, who's Little Wayne? Like, how small is he?
Is he related to Bruce?
Well, I mean, it's always is it Damien?
Well, the T3 Delicious says, is Christopher Rudd from Lucifer, the year 2000, I guess, the version, the same character from Tales of the Black Freighter from the comic in Watchmen?
Ooh.
That's a very specific question.
Yeah, I don't...
Whoa.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, like, specifically, like no, but I'm wondering if it's a deliberate reference. I mean, it's got to be, right? It can't be accidental.
Be.
Yeah, I don't think they're meant to be.
I've literally never thought of that before.
Yeah, you know, I mean, here's the thing too. The Black Freighter thing is such like a. It was such. I mean, I don't know how you make that work when you're making a Watchmen film, but it's kind of sad that stuff didn't make it in there. I mean, it's kind of in the ultimate cut.
You do it as a cartoon and you sell it as a DVD next to the motion comic at Target.
Animatrix style?
Yeah.
But yeah, oh, fuck. Is that the same character?
I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say that that's actually canon now. So everybody talk to people at DC.
But you mean yes, like more than it just being like referential in name or something, that it's actually like legitimately continuity, same character.
I'm saying it in a way that we will never know, so I'm just going to full tilt commit.
No, I want you to commit to something that's easily disproven. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna lean on the no side, but and Kyle can lean on the yes. But I'm very curious about it now. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, that was all the questions.
What a bewildering question to end on.
I like that.
To end on just a haunting Reddit question.
Yeah.
That's what Reddit's for. That's why we end on Reddit.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
So we haven't told Kyle about this part.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But it's always...
there's more.
I always forget about this, and so it'll be a surprise to everybody.
We've added a segment since the last time you were on.
Yeah, so I think I told you a little bit about this, because I don't know if you had read it or not, but the H-Dial series... Do you remember those comics at all?
Like Dial H for Hero? Were you ever into those?
So explain what it is.
Basically, like the premise back in the 70s was like readers could write in and be like, I think this is an idea for a superhero. Here's their power. And they would be shitty ideas, but you could use them for 3 pages. So the H-Dial was this mystical artifact. If you dial hero, you turn into a random thing with powers for like an hour. But it wasn't like you'd become Superman, like a specific hero. You'd become something like just made up. So some of the ones from like a recent run, one was called Control Alt Delete, and they had the power to like basically erase short bits of time, or like redo short bits of time. Or there's one called Captain Lacrimose, who like fed on the sadness of others.
All right.
So our new segment, we every week try to come up with
on the moment
our own Dial H characters.
So we just come up with a character and what his powers are going to be. Do you have one this week, Doc?
Okay, wait. Do I come up with my own idea?
Yes,
or
yeah,
you guys
exactly.
assign-
You come up with your own, yeah.
So
it's basically just name and power is pretty much what we come up with.
Yes, you can add as much detail as you want.
I've got one. I'm ready to go.
Already. Jesus Christ.
All right, let's
I dial H. And my character's name is the Charmer.
Ooh.
And the Charmer's power is the power of charm, and it basically turns you into Rodney Dangerfield from Caddyshack. And so for one day, I run around saying fun one-liners in a Hawaiian shirt, and people have a great time. And then whenever I say, hey, everybody gets laid, all of a sudden, Journey's Any Way You Want It starts playing, blues starts flowing, and we all have a party.
That just sounds like you.
No, this is the Charmer.
No, I get the name difference.
Richard,
well, then you understand that it's not, because its name is not Kyle Clark, podcasting comedian, writer man. It's the Charmer.
Oh, I apologize. No. How could I be
simply,
so...
I'm mild-mannered television writer and comedian Kyle Clark. The Charmer is a hero of the people.
They could never be the same person.
I would never believe people who say that the Charmer is a menace, because I think of all the good he does. Now I have photos of the Charmer that I'm going to go sell to a fun society magazine.
Fuck you. Oh my God. Doc, do you have a...
Well, I have one that was submitted by my sister that made me laugh that I want to share.
Sure.
So she texted me.
The one female listener we have.
Don't worry about it. So she texted me. It says, new Dial H suggestion. Elton John, a bedazzled toilet that can turn shit into success in a single flush.
That's pretty good.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So is that your submission for this week?
Can it be?
Sure.
Yeah.
Fuck, what am I going to do? Okay, I know. This is what happens literally every single week.
Thought of a dumb one.
Richard has never thought of one in advance.
Let's do... Okay, his
Mr. Lamp.
His name is Podcaster... No,
Libsyn, man.
His name is...
Hear me out. Your superhero name is Pizza Butt.
Fuck. I love this. That just sounds like me.
Everywhere you sit, turn like the whatever you're sitting on when you sit back up turns into a box of fresh hot pizza.
Oh, what a curse.
You're like,
And you know,
I
what'd be
just
fun
sat
is
on
you're
that.
definitely
but-
getting an invite to a party with the Charmer. Because now we're saving on za.
Does pizza? But if he sits in different ways, do we get different types of pizza? Like what does he have to do to get Hawaiian?
When you crisscross applesauce, obviously.
That's fucking amazing. My character this week is Influender.
Okay.
He's
Wow, the doctor is right. You are bad at that.
he's like a bacterial like virus villain.
Yeah.
Who's sort
Like
of
Cyrus.
pardon me?
Like Cyrus, the virus.
Yeah, a little bit. But he's basically like a hive mind, so he can just continuously spread through sickness and like create and like control a bunch of people at the same time. And the hero that he fights against is Liesel Pawn.
Oh, God. Fuck. You're so on Liesel Pawn's dick right now.
Because there's no books about it. Do you know Liesel Pawn at all, Kyle?
Lisa Pond.
Liesel Pawn.
Liesel Pawn is a bacteria Green Lantern, and Richard saw one panel about him, and now he's fucking obsessed.
Because it's such a cool concept. They gave a Green Lantern to a fucking bacteria.
Well, but did you get the response from the Lantern cast?
Yeah.
There's many more appearances of Despotellis, which is the Sinestro Corps virus member. So if you're interested in that sort of shit, there's at least some character you can
I know,
read.
but I want like a Osmosis Jones comic book based around Liesel Pawn.
Right, yeah.
I think that those...
It's fun because you're proving my point about how they really put their lamest characters up front at DC.
I think it's their smartest work.
Sorry.
They're
You know
like,
what? I've sat on this shit.
So there's a lady and she does magic, but she's also like does real magic and she looks cool. We should wait on that. But that guy with the magic ring, he's friends with a bacteria and a funny space squirrel.
No, do you know what? I've sat on this shit for 3 hours now. Aquaman is not fucking lame.
I mean, sure. Like, I suppose.
Oh, that was easier than I thought that was going to be. I
entitled
thought it was going to be a fight.
I mean, do I have to play the card of like, of course a Canadian's gonna argue Aquaman's not lame?
What the fuck does that mean? Oh, I got a jersey you, bud. Gonna give you a little 1-2. Start feeding you the right left, eh?
I'm not looking to engage in a Donnybrook, friend.
He said Donnybrook. I think we're friends again.
Yeah, I know. That's why he watches Letterkenny, so he can speak to us.
This duel is officially ended.
There's a pretty sweet hardcore band called Donnybrook, and when I learned that name is just a fancy word for fight, I was like, oh, that's the cleverest shitty two-step band I've ever heard.
Right?
That's so fucking rad.
Amazing.
They're pretty sweet.
Well, now that we're kind of driving this in for a landing, before we do, Kyle, do you have anything to promote?
Well, I have my podcast, This Is Rad. That's a celebration of enthusiasm and things people get excited about.
I think like 90% of our fans are your fans, but
yeah. So I mean,
this
it's
is a
always
plug
fun
for
when
no
I'm,
one.
Promoting to an echo chamber. But I'll say these things. I have an album out called I'm a Person that's on iTunes and Spotify
and a
Amazon,
website.
all those places you can pick up. And I am recording my new album in December 3rd at the Star Bar in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you live in the Atlanta metro area or nearby, please come by for that. It's going to be a fantastic show. It's my favorite venue in America, and I'm working real hard on this hour. I'm releasing it on the record label I just started, Radlands Records, and also in December should be the release of our first record, A Journey of Personal Discovery by Solange Castro, my good friend and a very brilliant comedian. So that's very exciting. We've got some more announcements coming with that soon. I'm trying to think of any other sweet announcements, but it's mostly those things right now. It's mostly me trying to like finish this album and not die and start a record label with $40 in my bank account. That's not true. But yeah, so those have been a grand adventure. I feel like there's something else I should be promoting, and I can't remember.
How about where people can find you?
Oh, yeah, I'm at Kyle Clark on Twitter and or at Kyle Clark is rad on Twitter and Instagram.
And you're actually using Instagram again.
I am. I posted 2 things, and people seem to enjoy them. One was a picture of me photoshopped into Smokey and the Bandit, and who doesn't want that?
Was that the one of you as the your child photo?
No, that was the promo for Solange's album recording show.
That's right. Yes. Okay. It's fucking awesome.
But yeah, so at Kyle Clark is rad, and you can see, if you go on my Instagram, I still think I have less than 20 photos on there, but one of them is of me with Iggy Pop, and that's pretty exciting, and one is me moving a club sandwich that looked like it had a face and having it say, I'm a sandwich.
That was really the you jumping the shark of Instagram, I think.
He peaked too soon.
Yeah. Well, I came out too strong, too fast.
Oh, well, that's fucking rad, man. We would love to hear from you guys, you residents out there, you listeners. If send us your hashtag dial docs, and we love hearing those every single week. All the different characters you guys can come up with. So send us your ideas for your heroes or villains, or maybe just send us questions for our next episode. Or if you just want to nerd out with us online and talk about how awesome Vertigo is or DC. You can do so by reaching out to us on our various social media accounts like Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our Twitter,
at Dr. DC,
Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast.
we got an email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com.
and we also got we have a new subreddit.
Yep. r/Dr_DC.
Those are fucking rad, and you guys can talk to each other on there. And also, don't forget to talk to us or read some of our DC specific articles. That we go on some tangents outside of these episodes, or go in more details about some of the sort of subject matter that we talk about on our website,
drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
which we have a merch page, and we're currently on Teespring. I think I'm going to bring us over to TeePublic because it's a much better platform, and then you can
T-Pub.
Yeah, it's way better. This is rad
Shots
on there.
fired, Teespring.
Yeah, it's true. They've got better selection, the better quality stuff, and you can use discount codes and like go on other people's pages and get money for it. So
I mean, you're not wrong, but this is a bad way to get people to buy the current Teespring.
well, get it because they're about to run out. It's a limited supply.
Yeah, get the lesser quality stuff that Richard just hawked.
Exactly, but it's rare. That's the point. These are comic book fans. These are collectors.
That's right. Bag it, board it.
That's right. And don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. Write something nice, and we'll read it on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for coming on for the second time.
We didn't mention it off the top.
Anytime,
this was
guys.
the first episode of Doctober.
Oh, that's right, Doctober.
Spooky.
Ripping off things from other podcasts like Radtober.
Totally different.
Yeah, it's completely different thing.
See, I'm only not commenting because I'm filling out my legal forms.
But seriously, thank you so much for coming on. That means a lot to us.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, of course, man. I love me some Dr. DC, so I'm glad to be back.
Hell yeah.
Always happy to have you.
All right.
It's I've also heard it's starting to get cold up there, and it's 81 degrees right now.
Fuck you.
It's
Which
here.
is,
Do you
which
know
I
what?
believe,
I'm gonna tell you what it is
20.
here right now. Right now it is. It's 5 degrees
I believe-
Celsius, which is like negative 200 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I think for you guys it would be like 20 degrees Celsius here right now.
Oh yeah, that's
15 and 20.
That's different.
Yeah, that's
Just
a little bit
pleasant.
different. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for listening. Same doc time, same doc channel next week.
Adios.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Aquaman, all the superheroes. They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure. They are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.